I'm joined now by Zanele Luvuno, CEO of Metamorphosis Integrated Solutions. A very good afternoon to you, Zanele. Thanks very much for your time. I'm still amazed at how big and well-resourced companies like Prasa can be duped so easily by such characters as Mr. Mthimkhulu.
Thanks, Vuyo. Thank you for having me. So you'd actually be surprised at how often it happens. And it's usually in the case of a candidate who is at the very, very top of their career. So we've found CFOs, we've found ops executives, we have found candidates that are functioning at executive level. And the reason they get away with it is because there is an assumption made by every company that hires them that, oh, I'm getting this guy from a organization that has a good reputation, therefore they must have checked. So although they will run checks, they won't be able to find the information, they won't be able to get the qualification checks. At that point, they need to make a judgment call. So you would then say, oh, the candidate was working for XYZ JSE listed company prior to coming to us, therefore he must have the qualification. And that JSE listed company, that was the previous company, assumed the same thing about previous company. And so that is actually, in a lot of cases, how it happens. And especially when it comes to international qualifications, it used to be incredibly difficult for us to do those checks and to verify people's qualifications. It still takes a very, very long time. So organizations are often stuck where they need to make a critical decision and they need to make a hiring decision, and then they make a judgment call. And that judgment call, like I said, would be based on precedent.
Even after so many high-profile cases that we've seen, are you saying that the situation has hardly changed?
So I think that companies used to keep quiet about it when it happened, and they would quietly usher somebody out the door. But with the age of information, they don't have that option anymore. So it's probably happening the same volume or maybe slightly more, let's say. But the real challenge is that information spreads so quickly now. That's why we're hearing about it. So companies have to take a new stance around how they approach reference checks and how they actually approach this aspect of their business in a slightly more serious manner than they did before.
Have there been are you aware of any studies that people made just to get a sense of why people would still do this? Because you will have noticed that in recent times when we've seen examples of this, it's actually been very capable people, and you wonder why they would put themselves in such a fix by claiming to have a PhD that you don't have.
Look, so I'm not sure about the studies. I did try to do a little bit of research before you guys called me, and I wasn't able to find anything current. But I can tell you just from experience, I think there are a number of factors. First and foremost, society puts a lot of pressure on people, right, to be the best, especially our society. Our identities are so tightly wound up in our qualifications, our job titles, that is where our acceptance from society comes from, right? So I think that very often they start out potentially studying the thing, right? And maybe something happens and they don't pass, for instance, but they get the job of their dreams, or they get offered an opportunity that they sort of can't turn away. And in your mind, I think that they believe that they will finish at some stage and nobody's going to find out, and they'll, very quickly cover up the gap, let's say. But think about the adoration and the adulation and the acceptance and how we as society fawn over people with qualification. We don't take people on their worth as a human being, on their deeds as a human being. I think I deem this person more important because they have this kind of job, they earn this kind of money, they have this kind of title. So I think there's a bit of the pressure we put on people, and there's then the pressure the individuals put on themselves once they get into that particular position. So it's actually an issue, a psychological issue of sorts within the individual. But I think there's a societal aspect to that as well.
And I suppose there are lessons for everyone here, for companies to be perhaps a little more robust, but also for individuals to say, it's just simply not worth it.
Well, this is the thing. I think the first thing, which is what I was alluding to just now, your identity cannot be wrapped up in what you do, right? And our identity is so much broader than that as human beings. And so there is some reconditioning that needs to happen in society as a whole. And then with regards to organizations, the reputational damage the reputational damage is huge. If you think about this, an engineering company, right, and an engineer that doesn't have the correct qualifications, in that instance, there's some companies that you can work for. If you make a mistake, right, it's just a mistake, you get to try again. Then there's some companies where if you make a mistake, somebody can die, right? You make a mistake on a train, people can die. So organizations need to be incredibly careful. We had a recent incident where there was a phenomenal candidate, absolutely phenomenal, in a listed company. The company wanted him so desperately. We couldn't verify his qualification. This gentleman came from a multinational. He'd been there for many years. He was in a listed company before that. And I even got involved, when the consultants couldn't verify the qualifications. And eventually the organization, we had the discussion, and the discussion says, if something goes wrong, the nature of our business says that if something goes wrong in our business, somebody can die. So it was a complete no for them. But in businesses, I guess, where maybe that's not the consequence, right? And it can be swept under the rug, I guess they can afford to take a little bit more risk, but absolutely not. The reputational damage, the legal ramifications of it ruins everybody's lives. You're out of a job as a human being. You're going to jail. Your reputation is damaged. I mean, I could go on and on and on and speak less of sort of the mental health issues that you're now dealing with as a human being for something that was completely avoidable and unnecessary.